Six were dead, and one was wounded that day. First were Mom and Granny, then a college student who had rushed in to stop the man, then two men in their 50s who had stood in the front rank of the Salvation Army parade, followed by a policeman. Finally, the man himself. He had chosen to be the last victim of his manic bloodshed. He stabbed himself in the chest hard, and like most of the other victims, died before the ambulance came. I simply watched the whole thing unfold before me, just standing there with blank eyes, as always. The first incident happened when I was 6. The symptoms had been there way earlier, but it was then that they had finally risen to the surface. That day, Mom must have forgotten to come get me from kindergarten. She told me later that she had gone to see Dad after all these days, to tell him that she would finally let him go. Not that she would meet someone new or anything, but that she would move on anyway. Apparently, she had said all that to him as she wiped the faded walls of the mausoleum. Meanwhile, as her love came to an end, once and for all, I, the uninvited guest of their young love, was completely forgotten. After all the kids were gone, I wandered out of the kindergarten on my own. All that 6-year-old me could remember about his house was that it was somewhere over a bridge. I went up and stood on the overpass with my head hanging over the railing. I saw cars gliding by beneath me. It reminded me of something I had seen somewhere, so I gathered as much saliva as possible in my mouth. I took aim at a car and spat. My spit evaporated long before it hit the car, but I kept my eyes on the road and kept spitting until I felt dizzy. "What are you doing? That's disgusting." I looked up to see a middle-aged woman passing by, glaring at me. Then she just continued on her way, gliding past me like the cars below, and I was left alone again. The stairways from the overpass fanned out in every direction. I lost my bearings. The world I saw underneath the stairs was all the same icy gray, left and right. A couple of pigeons flapped away above my head, so I decided to follow them. But by the time I realized I was going the wrong way, I had already gone too far. At kindergarten, I had been learning a song called Go Marching. Earth is round, go, go, march ahead. And just like the lyrics, I thought that somehow I would eventually get to my house if I had just go, go, march ahead. I stubbornly continued my small steps forward. The main road led to a narrow alley, lined by old houses, those crumbling walls, all marked with crimson random numbers, and the word vacant. There was no one in sight. Suddenly, I heard someone cry out in a low voice. Not sure if it was or or maybe it was. It was a low, short cry. I walked toward the sound, and it grew as I approached closer and closer. Then it changed to and it was coming from around the corner. I turned the corner without hesitation. A boy was lying on the ground, a small boy whose age I couldn't tell. But then black shadows were being cast on and off him, again and again. He was being beaten. The short cries weren't coming from him, but from the shadows surrounding him, more like shouts of exertion. They kicked and spat at him. I later learned that they were only middle school students, but back then, those shadows seemed tall and huge like grown-ups. The boy didn't resist, or even make a sound, as if he had grown used to the beating. He was getting tossed back and forth like a rag doll. One of the shadows kicked the boy in the side as a final blow. Then they left. The boy was covered in blood, like a coat of red paint. I approached him. He looked older than me, maybe 11 or 12 years old, around twice my age, but I still felt like he was younger than me. His chest was heaving quickly, his breath short and shallow like a newborn puppy's. It was obvious he was in danger. I went back to the alley. It was still empty. Only the red letters on the grey walls disturbed my eyes. After wandering for quite some time, I finally saw a small corner store. I slid open the door and stepped inside. Excuse me, family game was on television. The shopkeeper was snickering so hard watching the show that he must not have heard me. The guests in the show were playing a game where one person wearing earplugs had to guess words by watching others mouth them. The word was trepidation. I have no idea why I still remember the word. I didn't even know what it meant then. One lady kept making wrong guesses and drew laughs from the audience and the shopkeeper. Eventually, time ran out and her team lost. The shopkeeper smacked his lips, maybe because he felt bad for her. Sir, I called him again.
Yes.
He finally turned. There's someone lying in the alley,
Really?
he said indifferently and sat up. On television, both teams were about to play another round of high points game that could turn the tide. He could die. I sat fiddling with one of the chewy caramel packs neatly lined up on the display stand.
Is that so?
Yes, I'm sure. That was when he finally looked me in the eye.
Where would you learn to say such creepy things? Lying is bad, son.
I fell silent for a while, trying to find the words to convince him. But I was too young to have much vocabulary, and I couldn't think of anything else truer than what I had already said. He could die soon. All I could do was repeat myself. I waited for the show to finish, while the shopkeeper called the police. When he saw me fiddling with the caramel again, he snapped at me to leave, if I wasn't going to buy anything. The police took their time coming to the sea, but all I could think of was the boy lying on the cool ground. He was already dead. The thing is, he was the shopkeeper's son. I sat on a bench at the police station, swinging my legs hovering in the air. They went back and forth, working up a cool breeze. It was already dark, and I felt sleepy. Just as I was about to doze off, the police station door swung open to reveal Mom. She let out a cry when she saw me and struck my head so hard it hurt. Before she could fully enjoy the moment of our reunion, the door swung wide open again, and in came the shopkeeper, his body held up by the policeman. He was wailing, his face covered in tears. His expressions was quite different from when he watched TV earlier. He slumped down on his knees, trembling, and punched the ground. Suddenly, he got to his feet and yelled, pointing his finger at me. I couldn't exactly understand his rambling, but what I got was something like this.
You should have said it seriously. Now it's too late for my son.
The policeman next to me shrugged.
What would a kindergartner know?
He said, and managed to stop the shopkeeper from sinking into the floor. I couldn't agree with the shopkeeper, though. I had been perfectly serious all along. Never once did I smile or overreact. I couldn't understand why he was scolding me for that, but 6-year-old me didn't know the words needed to form this question into a full sentence. So I just stayed silent. Instead, Mom raised her voice for me, turning the police station into a madhouse, with the clamoring of a parent who had lost his child and a parent who had found hers. That night, I played with toy blocks, as I always did. They were in the shape of a giraffe and could be changed into an elephant if I twisted down its long neck. I felt Mom staring at me, her eyes scanning every part of my body. Weren't you scared? She asked. No, I said. Rumors about that incident, specifically how I didn't even blink at the sight of someone being beaten to death, spread quickly. From then on, Mom's fears became a reality, one after another. Things got worse after I entered elementary school. One day, on the way home from school, a girl walking in front of me tripped over a rock. She was blocking my way, so I examined the Mickey Mouse hairband she was wearing, while I waited for her to get back up. She just sat there and cried. Finally, her mom came and helped her stand. She glanced at me, clucking her tongue. You see your friend fall and don't even ask if she's okay? So the rumors are true. Something is weird about you. I couldn't think of anything to say, so I said nothing. The other kids sensed that something was happening and gathered around me, their whispers prickling my ears. For all I knew, they were probably echoing what the girl's mom had said. That was when Granny came in to save me, appearing out of nowhere like Wonder Woman, sweeping me up into her arms. Watch your mouth, she snapped in her husky voice. She was just unlucky to trip. Who do you think you are to blame my boy? Granny didn't forget to say a word to the kids either. What are you staring at, you little brats? We walked farther away. I looked up to see Granny, with her lips pressed tight. Granny, why do people call me weird? Her lips loosened. Maybe it's because you're special. People just can't stand it when something is different. I go, my adorable little monster. Granny hugged me so tight my ribs hurt. She always called me a monster. To her, that wasn't a bad thing.